Ready, go.
Okay, so we're going to be going over the nervous system. And to start out, the meninges are right here. You have to peel them away in order to get to the brain. It's the second layer of defense and protects against other forms of like blood diseases and stuff like that. An example would be if you get meningitis. It's when the meninges are not doing their job properly, and you get symptoms like headache, stiff neck, and it could get worse if you don't get medication right away.
And it swells up, and it could be either viral or a bacteria infection.
So going on to the different parts of the brain, the frontal lobe would be the very front of the pig, right behind the eyes, and that has to do with reasoning, planning, speech, movements, and emotions.
It is basically your whole behavior and your personality right there in your whole frontal lobe.
The temporal lobes are on the side, and they have to do with your perception, your hearing, and auditory stimuli. On the very top of the brain is going to be the parietal lobe, which has to do with your orientation, your recognition, and other emotional stimuli and like sensory input.
Right here in the middle, dividing the two hemispheres, is the corpus callosum. So it basically separates the two hemispheres from interact, but you can still interact through various nerves.
The very back of this, right here, is the cerebellum, which has to do with regulation and coordination of movements, your posture and balance. Underneath it, if you were able to look underneath and inside the brain, we'd be able to see the olfactory bulb, which has to do with your sense of smell. Also below here, at the very, very top of the spinal cord, which connects the spinal cord and the brain, is going to be the medulla oblongata, and that has to do with other unconscious things like breathing, your heart rate, your blood pressure, and that's going to be way back here. Up here at the very top of the spinal cord are the cranial nerves. They control everything having to do with your senses, with your speech, and everything having to do with the brain.
And before we move on, also below is the occipital lobe, which has to do with visual processing.
Lower on the spinal cord is this long thing right here. It goes all throughout the body. And at the very top we have the cranial. Lower we have the cervical, which has to do with more bodily functions having to do with like the upper body, with the shoulders, head, and neck. If we further on is going to be the thoracic, which has to do with like your abdomen region, like where your ribs are, and it controls movement through there. Lower is going to be the lumbar, which is like the lower back region, controlling the lower back and starting to control your legs. And then when we go down here, we have the sacral region, which controls all of the movement in your lower body, including your legs and pelvic region. And at the very end of the spinal cord is the cauda equina, which is where the spinal cord meets together, and it's just a bundle of all those nerves, and it sends signals from the spinal cord down into the lower parts of a leg,
such as your toes and such.
And then the vagus nerve, which you can't necessarily point out, it's called the wandering nerve. That's how it gets its name, and it goes throughout the entire body and keeps everything connected, and it helps with stuff like digestive and stuff like that all throughout the body.